Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Higher Moment Mastermind. I'm Shira Lotzar, joined by my colleague, Vern Schellinger. We are here to answer your job search questions. So, Tavi, Holly, Ty, what you got for us? Anything top of mind?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I was, sure you're familiar, and probably Vern, the association chat talk from 8:30 to 9. They were talking about the Great Resignation. And the one reason people are resigning is there's no career track. There's nowhere to go. And they're finding that they're working with older workers, which are kind of dead wood. So they're just leaving because they want to move about faster. They want to go up. I don't know. I guess that could be part of the reason.
Yeah, there's probably lots of reasons, but those certainly are some of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's been a common challenge for young professionals for as long as I can remember. You know, there's always the sense of, you know, wanting to move up, always people standing in their way, especially small organizations where there isn't a lot of movement because there just aren't a lot of levels, you know. That's pretty common. It's just a matter of how do you challenge people where they're at so they feel like they're growing, you know.
I do have a question in regard to that. I hear the statistic 26 months in a job. That's like the median or the average. Is that true, or is that just a rumor?
26 months for somebody's tenure?
Yeah, for somebody's
Average
tenure, then they
tenure?
move on.
I don't know, but 26 months, that's interesting. I mean, these days I wouldn't, look, I don't know the statistic. I wouldn't be surprised to say people staying a couple of years. It's more or less common.
Yeah, the other thing that could skew that, and you'd have, again, this is where you got to really understand the data. I mean, there are a lot of people, you've read stories, I'm sure you've read stories where people show up and a month later they quit. Well, if that's considered, you know, somebody turning over and they're only there a month and I was there 5 years, well, then it becomes, you know, 26 months, right? So, yeah, just got to dig into the data, or have them, you know, if there's a good explanation for the data and how they got the data and where it came from, then there's more reliability maybe in that number.
Here's what I will say. The likelihood, there's basically 3 times in a person's career where they're likely to make a move. So they're most likely to make a move between 0 to 4 years. After 4 years, something I think emotionally sort of clicks and their roots grow a little deeper. You know, people sort of know their work, they know their relationships, they feel comfortable. Then the next kind of iteration is 4 to 10 years. Okay. Yeah. And once the person stayed for 10 years, the roots grow really, really deep, like an oak tree. And then it's likely they're going to stay forever. It's going to be really, really hard to get somebody out of the job after 10 years. There's a loyalty, there's a camaraderie, there's a knowing, and it's usually something big, like they're downsized or they have to move or, you know, something. But after 10 years, people tend to just stay. So 0 to 4, that's usually, you see the most turnover. So anyway, Olga, are you new with us?
Yes, good morning. This is my first session with you guys. My sister, Yelena Shipina, recommended you guys highly.
Nice.
I'm in a different region. I am in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay.
I'm entering job search after devoting past 6 years of my life to bringing up my child. And I'm looking forward to getting some wisdom on how to return back to professional world after the break.
Oh, I see. Well, we're here to answer your questions. So if you just want to ask us maybe a question about that, Vern and I together, we're here to help you. Vern and I both come from recruiting and coaching backgrounds. And so we have a lot of advice. So do you have a specific question you'd like us to address?
Yes, I would love to. This coming Monday, I have a explorational interview with a bank. And if you could give me any advice on how to better handle that, maybe also keeping in mind my specifics that I'm re-entering professional world after this break of 6 years. I think my specific situation also, I feel calling me for entering back into professional world, not at the full-time position that I held prior to having my child, but I'm seeing with my schedule, it would be optimal for me to get a position for 32 hours a week. If you could suggest how I should approach that with the employer, so it's not a huge turn off and they don't immediately dismiss me.
Well, Olga, here's the big question with that. Is that a requirement for you, or is that just simply a preference?
You know, it's a preference, but I would say it's pretty strong.
Well, let's put it this way. If they insisted on 40 hours a week, would you turn down the job?
Well, if everything else about job worked well, I would have to make additional arrangements to free myself for that time.
Okay.
But as of how things are right now, I'm pretty comfortable going into 32 hours a week, but don't have yet arrangements in place for freeing full time.
So the reason why I asked you that is because that's going to determine how and when you bring that up as a topic.
Okay.
If it was a requirement, meaning you can only work 32 hours a week and no more, you'd actually want to bring that up front. That's the fair thing to do, because if they can't do it, it's not worth it. Don't waste anybody's time, right? Just let them know that this is a requirement. If it's not a requirement and you really feel like you could make it work, I'd wait till the end of the interview, after you've gotten to know each other and everybody likes each other, and say, look, regarding my hours, I do have a work-life balance preference. I wanted to see if this would work for you. Is it possible for me to have a 32-hour schedule? Because that would really help with my home life. Then if they say yes, great. If they say no, you say, no problem. That's okay. I can make it work. I'm just curious, is this something that would be possible? Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does.
Yeah. Yeah. Vern, any thoughts on that?
Well, the one thing and this is an informational interview, did you say, or did I?
It's an explorational interview. I have a time set up this coming Monday with Vice President of Talent Acquisition for the bank. And it's not a particular position specific. It's they are interested based on my resume and based on my references that they received into talking to me and seeing if we can find an areas that would work for the bank and me, where we can meet. So it's not a job specific, but it is with exploring that in mind.
That's,
I guess, two things. One, what may work in your favor, and I can tell you this from my own experience in my bank, they've literally had to close the doors to the bank because they didn't have enough staff. So, if I'm in the bank, I'll take somebody for 30 hours. I'll take somebody for 20 hours.
It's a good point.
So that may work in your favor, but to Shira's point, I wouldn't get into that. And, but that you may luck out when you say, well, I really only can work 32 hours. And they might say, oh, well, that's okay with us. That's great. We'll figure it out. The other thing that is most important in that exploratory interview is for you to be prepared to communicate to the vice president or whoever you're talking to how you believe your skills and your experience would match up with the role that, even though that's not a specific job, think about and do some research on a website. What are the key skills that really, obviously customer service. So if you've got some customer service in your background, you want to talk about your ability to, to serve customers, to communicate with customers, to build relationships with customers.
Can we ask you really fast what your background is?
Yes, absolutely. My background is in finance. I have 2 master's degrees, one in economics and management from St. Petersburg, Russia, where I'm originally from, and second master's degree in accounting from University of North Carolina.
Wow.
And I have over 10 years of professional experience, both in public accounting, doing taxes, and later on in the industry, doing managerial accounting, supporting executives with internal reporting, finance functions, financial analysis. So that's my background. And prior to me having my daughter, I worked big, very involved jobs. Right now I'm in a situation of a single mom, which I probably better off keeping off the table with the employer,
Right.
not to be discriminated against, importantly. But that's where, you know, my, in my perfect world, that's where my desire to work 30, 32 hours comes from, because I still want to be present mom for my child. If God willing to lead me to certain position, but I realized that I probably cannot take one of these big unlimited working hours positions I used to work before, but I'm thinking that there must be something that could accommodate my life, and also where I can bring value to the company.
Yeah. Okay. So likely in this exploratory conversation, they're going to be digging into your skills, which are obviously pretty substantial. And so you're going to want to explain to them what you're capable of doing, and then ask them about their business needs and how somebody with your background could make an impact, and then see what the conversation looks like. Because it could be that they want to put you in the headquarters, you know, rather than just like making you a teller, right? So
right,
you have a lot of financial analysis skills. So I would ask them, you know, what are their business needs, and how does that align with what you can contribute? Good. Well, we pray that goes well for you, Olga.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. All right. Welcome, Sonia and Mary. Good to see you guys, gals. All right. Any questions you guys have for us? Any topics? Because we can explore, you know, go deep into some topics if you guys like.
I have one, but I'm not sure how to ask you as a question, but I'm going to try. Okay, so I haven't found my you know, ideal job yet, or something that I'm going to be happy with ongoing. But I was hired at something temporarily until, this is temporarily for me, until I find that job or start that business or go back into, I'm getting my broker's, like my real estate license again in this state. But meanwhile, this position that I was hired for is like a demonstrator for more higher quality foods. And I was hired by that like almost a month ago. And it was all exciting. And for me, you know, it's like 4 hours if I wanted to work 4 hours, 8 hours a day if I wanted to work 8 hours. And I thought, I was just so excited, you know. And then all of a sudden they sent me all of this information via email, and about 3 different apps that I have to sign up on. Then all of these videos that I have to watch. And I just got overwhelmed, and I did half of it. And the other half is still kind of lingering on. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, Mary, why are you doing all this work and not getting paid for it? So my question is, how do I conceptualize that to the, apparently this is a startup, to the owner, because it just sounded too good to be true. And now I'm beginning to think it is too good to be true. And how do I go to them and say, hey, look, you know, how do I do that? How do I,
Mary,
without,
have you already started the job?
no, well, okay, according to them, I'm hired, I'm on payroll, it's a
Right.
W-2, which
Right.
I have
When
not
do you,
done
when do you
W-2 in a
start?
while.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask you several like quick
Oh
questions.
yeah, go ahead. Go
When
ahead.
do you, when is your start date?
My start date was 3 weeks ago.
Your start date was, meaning you started the job 3 weeks ago?
I started the job according to them.
When
You're
are you getting
hired,
paid?
here's what you disclosures.
Well, and that's different than a start date. So there's the hire date when you get the offer, like you're hired on a certain date. The start date is sometime later. Start date is when
Okay,
you actually
so
start
I'm
the job,
waiting.
the first day that you're getting paid.
Okay,
When is
I'm
that?
waiting to, apparently they want me to complete all of these things, modules and things that they send me. And then I will be on their calendar. And I have a whole app for that.
Well, it sounds like this is just training and preparation. I think your question
Yeah.
is, why shouldn't you be getting paid for the training? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
So they should be, you should be on their payroll once you start doing this training.
Right. That's how I feel.
course.
Yes. You sure
Of
you
course.
hit the nail on the head.
Of
Yes.
course, yes, yes, yes. So I would call them and
Yes.
I would clarify that and say, I'd like to make sure that I'm on the payroll when I start to do my training. When would that date be? That's it. That's all you need to
That's what
say.
I asked them, right? Okay,
Yeah.
it's easy. Okay,
That's
yeah.
just easy.
Yeah,
I'd
because
like,
I had this like, you know, this is ridiculous, you know, because in the old days, old school, they would put a retainer on you. You know, it's like, okay, we're going to have this retainer for this amount of days. So while you're learning or while we're doing what we need to do
Yeah.
in order to launch our pad, you know what I mean? And the retainer consisted, I mean, I've done this with employees myself when I had my franchise, and the retainer consisted of money, you know, a retainer fee for like, you know, so much, maybe
Sure.
not as much.
yeah, I
And
would
I'm
say,
feeling
Mary,
like, wait a minute.
no, just go to them right away after this call and say, I received all the information. I'm ready to go. I'd like to make sure that I'm on your payroll before I start my training process. What date will that be? That's it.
Thank you.
Vern, any other thoughts on that?
I guess the only other thing that made me pause when you were talking, Mary, was, you know, you were doing this and you said you were overwhelmed, and am I reading into it? I mean, do you like this work? Do you think this is something you want to do, or?
Yeah, because it's like almost like, Vern, okay, I have 4 adult children, and I keep asking them, you know, if you guys want to start a business, you know, mom is ready and willing and able, you know, because I do have a lot of skills that I could bring to you. And this kid, or at least, you know, this adult kid that's starting this business, it just seems so, I'm excited for him. I'm excited for the business. I'm excited to be part of it.
Okay.
But hey, wait a minute, you know?
All right. Okay, that's good. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, what Shira said is the right thing to do, but if you're going down a path and you really don't like the job, then maybe, you know, you've got to go down a different path. But if you like the job and you're excited about it, yeah, then continue to make sure you're getting paid and keep going forward.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing out some thoughts out of my brain here. And thank you.
Sure. Tavi?
So I had a question on what Vern's question to Marie. So my question is, well, what process, I guess, do you recommend in terms of like helping people kind of find their proverbial sweet spot in terms of, what they want to do in terms of, work and career and whatnot.
Can you help us refine that a little bit? It's kind of a big, broad
Um,
question.
like
Something
in
like-
terms of like aligning like what they do for work in terms of like what their passions are, what their interests are, and kind of what they're really like passionate in terms of doing in terms of work.
So I'll go ahead. It's been a very long time since I've shared this, and I haven't shared it, I don't think, with a lot of folks in this group, but I'm going to double back on an exercise that I use when I am starting with my career coaching clients, and I call it Passionativity. And I'm just going to walk you through it real fast. Okay. So you may want to jot this down or take a screenshot of it. I'm going to be, I'll be walking you through it, all these quadrants. All right. So the concept behind Passionativity is that when you look at your skills and your career motivators, when you see with the alignment of them, that's when you can figure out kind of what you're interested in doing. All right. And the way that these boxes work is they're labeled as follows: high motivation, low motivation, high skill, and low skill. Okay. So the upper right quadrant here, I call high engagement. So these are the skills that you feel you are a rock star at and you love to do. This is the sweet spot, this particular box, okay? You have great skills, you're great at it, everybody knows you're great at it, you love to do it, you give discretionary effort, wild horses can't drag you away from the stuff, you love it, all right? But you contrast that with stopgap work. High skill, low motivation. This is work you're great at, but you tolerate. Big difference between that box and the first box. In the first box, you run after this work. You love it, excited about doing it. But this other box is, yeah, fine. Yeah, I'm good at it. Okay. But it's not work that's going to get you up Monday morning. So when you look at these two boxes, even though you're skilled at both, the top one is where you want to focus your opportunities. The bottom one is where you're going to say, if I have to do that kind of work, I will, but I don't want a preponderance of that work in my job. Contrasted with professional development, it breaks down into two quadrants: want to and need to. So the want to, this is all areas of growth, okay? But the want to would be the get to, the things that you would love to be better at. And the need to are things that you feel that you should be better at. I'll give you an example. Let's say you were a marketing professional. You might say, I would love to be better at social media strategy. That would be an understandable thing for a marketer these days. But a lot of marketers are not, unlike Olga, are not very good at numbers, okay? And so a lot of marketers might say, oh, I need to be better at managing budgets. Yeah, all right, fine. They don't want to, but they kind of feel like they have to because of where they're at in their career. And then contrast that with disengagement. So disengagement would be low skill, low motivation, things that completely drain you, all right? So all your career skills should fit into these kinds of boxes. And one of the things you can do is, if you're looking for any sort of career pivot, is to look at this high engagement box and use the following formula, okay? It's what I call ing versus I know that sounds funny, ing versus The ing is the skill, the is the profession. Writing is different than writer. Event planning, event planner, okay? So I have seen it happen where somebody will do this exercise, look at the high engagement box, look at the, half a dozen skills that are in that box. And then if you really look at those skills, you can say to yourself, oh, is there one skill or two skills here that I love doing so much that I can turn it from an ing into an So I'll give you an example. Years ago, I had a coaching client named Jacqueline, and she was a nonprofit CEO. And she came to me, she's like, oh, okay, I'm going to get another nonprofit executive job. Well, I took her through this exercise and she filled this out, and we were looking at her high engagement box. I said, Jacqueline, are there any skills in here that you love doing so much that you could actually see yourself doing it full time? And she pauses and she gets big eyed and she almost jumps across the table. And she says, event planning. I said, really? She says, no, you don't understand. She goes, donor event planning, event fundraising. I said, really? She goes, I am like an expert at this. She goes, I am so good at donor events. I have other nonprofit colleagues. from other groups who tell me how amazing and they want to learn my techniques. People laugh, they cry, they this, they that, all this stuff. And she goes, she's amazing at it. I said, could you see yourself doing that full time? Like maybe as a business? She goes, yes. So humanimpactevents.com was born. Okay. We helped her just, transform. And the point is that this is a really great skill to start out with, to figure out what is your passion? What are the things that you enjoy doing? Now, that's one piece of it. One piece of it is what I call your lane. Your lane is what you do. This Passionativity exercise helps you figure out your lane, what you want to do next. That's different than who you want to do it for. That's what I call your community, your industry, the mission, the sector. Some of you have that. Some of you have a community that you want to serve. I know Sonia's into GovCon, or I'm into associations, or Olga's into the financial sector, or whatever. You look at, you might have a community that you want to do it for. You may not, it's okay. You don't have to have a community. You don't have to have an industry. There are a lot of people who are sort of cross industry, like take an HR person, like when Vern was in HR, and Sonia too, but I think Vern more particularly, Vern, you did a bunch of industries, right? You did corporate, you did nonprofit, you were sort of all over the place. I know, Sonia, you've had variety of experience, but you've had a lot of focus in GovCon. Okay, so you know GovCon, you kind of know the lingo, whereas other people are sort of cross-sectoral, and that's okay. You don't have to have a community, but you might. And if you do have a community, and a community that you want to focus in on, it's really good to know, because you can highlight that on your resume, you can highlight that in your LinkedIn profile, you can highlight that in your networking, and then people kind of know that you get them. Because that's the thing about having a community, is you speak the language, right? So I'm deeply ensconced in the association community. I speak the language. I understand what keeps associations up at night. There's lingo, right, around that. I don't have hospitality lingo. I don't have commercial real estate lingo. I don't have GovCon lingo. I've got association lingo. So it's helpful if you have a community to emphasize that in your networking, LinkedIn, resume, and so forth. So there's my little speech. Hope that helped. Tavia is probably a bigger answer than you were looking for, but was that a little helpful?
Yeah, I also might revisit. I don't know whether you've heard of the book Start With Why.
Yes.
By Simon
Simon
Sinek.
Sinek.
So I read that before, but I might revisit. Just find your why and start your why. Start with why that he wrote. So I might revisit those two books as well. Yeah.
I think those are great. I mean, of course, he wrote that for the corporate sector in terms of how a business finds their why, but I think there is transferability to a person.
Yeah.
To say, what's the thing that's driving you, which might help you figure out even a mission statement. That can be helpful. What's the impact that you want to make in the world through your work? Why do you do what you do? Fern, anything you want to share about career pivots and finding passion?
No, I mean, your exercise, I was thinking of your exercises. Tabby was asking the question, so you share it with them. Yeah, it really is about, discovering what you're really good at and what you really like to do and what excites you and what engages you. I mean, I'll tell you a short story. When I was working with an executive coach and I was thinking about leaving an organization, she said to me, whenever I hear you talk about networking or career management, I hear so much passion in your voice and excitement. She said, I want you to start journaling. So I came home one night really late, 8, 9 o'clock. And my wife says to me, she says, my client's husband just lost his job. Would you talk to him? I said, sure, I'll talk to him. She says, now, you need to call him now. It's like 8 or 9 o'clock. And I'm like dead tired. And so I called him. I was on the phone for probably an hour with him. And as soon as I got up from that, I was like, I had all this energy. And it was like listening to the executive coach and start journaling it. It was like discovering what this is high. Well, this was high engagement for me.
Right. That's right.
And so, if you can think about times when you've had those types of experiences where you're just in the zone, you're just excited and energy. That's a key that, you're finding your high engagement.
That's right.
So that's how you got in coaching, for executive coaching.
Well, it wasn't, I was working with an executive coach. I was going through kind of my own transition in my, in my own career. The company I was working for, the CEO, I knew was going to get fired by the board. And I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. And so that's what executive coaches go. They try to help you figure out your path forward, or help you resolve issues, problems that are facing you, or get better at certain skills. It just depends on what your goal or objective is with an executive coach.
But I think what Tavi's saying is, now here you are a coach right now. Did that then kind of eventually lead you to where you are now?
Well, I was actually doing career management before I saw that executive coach. I could tell you another story. When I lost my job, when I left Dunkin' Donuts after 25 years, and I went through what's called outplacement or transition with an outplacement firm,
Which is career coaching. Actually.
which is career coaching. That's what outplacement firms do. When I went through there as a client, and the consultants were helping me, teach me how to write my resume and how to network and how to interview and so forth and so on, I left that experience. I found another job, but that experience said to me, I said, I could see myself someday in this role. I could see myself doing this outplacement work, because I was just so impressed with how this particular firm worked and their levels of customer service. And lo and behold, through networking, I found a job as a career coach with Lee Heck Harrison. So I had already done a fair amount of career coaching before I was working with the executive coach, but it just, her, journal it, and it just solidified for me how much, that's a passion for me.
And then the second part of this equation is figuring out who is going to benefit most from those skills, because they are the other side of this, right? You're one side, they're the other side.
Yeah.
It's important for you to figure out what you want to do, but it's just as important to figure out how you can make an impact, because, it's kind of like, hey, I can wake up one day and say, I want to be a rocket scientist, but who's going to hire me as a rocket scientist, right? Okay. If I don't have the skills. And so you got to there's a voice of reality here too, right? You've got to look at what the skills that you do have and what is truly transferable. And I don't just mean your soft skills that are transferable. I mean your hard skills. Your soft skills are important. Your soft skills are your behavioral skills. It's how you show up. You're strategic, you're organized, you're great with people, all of that. That's fantastic. That's not quite what employers are looking for when they're looking, if they're going to consider you as a career changer. Those skills are important, but they're looking for your hard skills, your functional skills, things you do. Okay. So you have got customer service skills, you've got project management skills, you've got writing skills, whatever it is, financial analysis skills. If you can take those skill sets, if you want to pivot, let's say from an ing to an okay, you've got to be able to showcase that on your resume. You've got to be able to draw it out. So it's really, really clear to the employer, here's what I've done, and here's how it's going to be relatable. The example that I like to give is, years ago, I had a coaching client who was an attorney, and he wanted to not be an attorney anymore. He wanted to become a recovering attorney. But we decided in our first session is that what he really wanted to do is become a writer. Like, how do you turn an attorney into a writer? Well, I looked at his background and pulled out all of his writing examples, because lawyers write this and write that, and then I transformed his LinkedIn profile and created a whole about section that talked about why he likes to write and his style of writing, all this stuff. He ended up becoming a journalist with a legal trade publication. Okay, so the publication said, oh, he wants to write, cool. We're a legal trade publication. He comes from the legal sector. There's a connection there, right? It made sense for them because he knew the lingo, but he was able to pivot into a whole new lane. Okay, so he changed his lane, he changed what he was doing, but he stayed in the same community. So if you're going to ever make a pivot, it's easier to do one or the other, not both. You can shift the lane or you can shift the community, but it's hard to shift both because employers are risk averse and they want to know that you can slide into home base. and you've got minimal learning curve. So shift the one or shift the other, but really hard to shift both. Okay, so it is possible to do it, but you got to do it with a lot of intention.
Have employers always been risk averse, or is that like new?
That's, I would say who knows always, like I haven't been to the workforce.
Well, you know what I
right?
mean, like.
But I mean, yeah, I would
yeah.
say in general, yes, but more and more so.
Okay, okay.
Over the years, I found more and more. And part of that is because, look, things are changing at the speed of light, okay? And nobody has time to train anymore. You know, we don't have, and we have fewer and fewer layers of management, you know, just people have just been, you know, kind of consolidating. And managers are no longer just managers. They're also doing their own work, right? Way back when, a manager was a manager, like was their job. And people had time to train and all of this. And now you got to get in there and make hay fast. And so they need you to have the skills. And so if you're going to make a shift, you've got to be able to demonstrate you've got the skills to do it quickly.
And the other big part of, I think a lot of that is just some of the unconscious bias that exists. Obviously, ageism is the biggest shining example of that, where people have these unconscious bias. And again, when it comes to you know, looking at a resume and going through the interviews, I mean, sometimes the decisions, you know this, Sonia, the decisions come, you know, flip a coin between these two people. And still the biases are probably there. You know, I like this person a little bit more than I like that person, you know, in the interview. So
there you go. Holly.
It's a different subject. Is it okay if I change, or did you want to stay on the, okay. I got a lot out of what you were just sharing, so thank you. There's a couple of things I'm running into when finding job postings. One is I'm still in the process of kind of building my network. I've almost doubled it since I've really put my efforts into it. But when I find a job, I often don't have any connections that I can contact and say, hey, can I talk to you more about the company or the role? And then the other one is that sometimes I'm finding postings that look like they've been up for a month, and it might look really interesting and like a good match. And it's taking me a really long time to customize my resume and cover letter for each position I'm applying to. And there's just that question of, is it worth the time for, so I know I'm kind of asking both, so you can figure out how you want to answer them. But is it, at what point, how old do you say this job description or this posting has been up for 4 weeks? Is this just now riding out the requirement for has someone already been hired for it?
That's a great question. I'll answer that one. It's very likely that they're writing out the requirement, especially if it's and this is really important. That this is a very a June 10th, 2022 statement. Okay, if it is a remote job, Holly, if it is a remote job, it is very likely that the position that they have more candidates than they know what to do with very quickly. That's the phenomenon that's happening right now, because a remote job means they can have people all over the country. It means everybody's applying for that job. If it is not a remote job, and when I say remote, I have to be more specific. If it is a position that is fully remote, meaning there's no requirements for where the person lives and they can live anywhere, then chances are within a week or two, they're way overwhelmed with responses. If it is remote, but they require for you to live locally, less competition. And the least competition you're going to have is if it's a hybrid job. Okay. Most people don't want to do hybrid. So your competition is very, very small. Okay. And in fact, if anything, it's very difficult for employers to find people to work hybrid, let alone full-time in the office. So yeah, having it been open a month, they may still be looking. That doesn't mean you shouldn't apply, but it is to the point that the point is that you do need to be expeditious, is what you're implying. If it's been open a month, look, you can always reach out. I don't know if you hopefully you'll get a response. I don't know if you will, but to find out, is the job still available? Nothing wrong with that. Sonia?
Holly, what I have found is that if it's still out there, even if it's past 30 days, if it interests you, apply. Because I'm going through that right now. I applied for some jobs in, what month are we in? June, in April, and they still, posting. And I'm totally confused. If I interview I write to the recruiter to, get the scoop. If they had hired somebody, they would say the job has been filled. If they don't respond, like if they're ghosting you, normally the job is still open. But I'm finding that people are taking entirely too long to fill jobs. So I think if it's a job that interests you, to do it, to go ahead and, because I know right now a colleague of mine that applied for a job at the end of December that hit in October, and she got the job in January. So you can't, there's no,
It's true.
no formula.
Yeah.
It's absolutely true. You don't know. The
No.
chances are, that in 30 days, if it's a remote job, like I said, they're going to have a lot of candidates. But to Sonia's point, you never know.
You
They could be
never
looking
know.
for that
Give
unicorn.
it a shot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially if they're looking for a unicorn, which a lot of people are, and you'll know
Oh,
they are. You'll know that they are in the requirements section if they're saying you must have this industry background or this skill set or whatever. Then they're looking for that impossible person, and that can take quite a long period of time. As to the customization of your resume, I'm going to go ahead and share another tool with you guys. So this is, as some of you may know, I am in my coaching work. I'm also a resume writer. And so I'm going to share with you guys a sample here. And I'm going to share this because, not that you have to do your resume exactly like this, but this is what I call a hybrid resume. It's chronological and functional all at the same time. And it's extremely customizable, really, really simply. So whatever resume format you do have, if you want to do it in something like this form, this could make it very, very easy to customize. And so it looks like this. This is a real resume, but it's, sanitized information. And so what makes it customizable, number one, is that it has a heading at the top, a career headline, all right? And that is the first thing that gets customized. So whatever it is, whatever the job is that you're applying to, you wouldn't put the exact title, but you do something esque, so we wouldn't say, like, if you're applying for a director, director of marketing communications, like you wouldn't say director of marketing communications, you say marketing communications leader, like this, right? Or customer service professional, that kind of thing. Even especially if you're career changing, you could say aspiring marketing professional, aspiring policy analyst, aspiring something. But that's the first place that gets changed. Second thing is right here, right? Actually, even right here, I do these little sort of kind of, descriptors as to kind of how you show up in the world. You can change that. Here, this text box with competencies actually leads to the rest of the resume. And this is what makes it hybrid, is that you have these stories, okay? And the stories are labeled. And the labels, again, they map back to the box. And this is the other thing that gets changed. And this is, Holly, super important, because when you're going down, when a recruiter is going down the page, okay, what they're looking for are keywords. They're looking for the keywords. So every time you have an accomplishment story, not a job description, by the way, an accomplishment story, you label it with a competency. When you do that, everything hangs together. So here, this person is being labeled as a marketing communications leader. Every competency here maps back to that, and it creates a whole brand. In that job description that you're looking for, they're going to have unique competencies. I know you're kind of in the education and training space, right? Well, those jobs are not all the same. They're all a little different. They have different kinds of unique skills. One person's emphasizing curriculum design, another person's emphasizing, I don't know, content development or classroom training, whatever, okay? Whatever those competencies are, you look back to your resume. Number one, you figure out, do you have the right accomplishment stories? but more importantly, how can you change the labels? Because that's what people see at a quick glance. Bing, 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 bing. They're like keyword, 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 keyword. Then they may go and look at the story, but it's the keywords that are going to get them to notice you, to bring you in the first place. So if you have a headline and you've got the competencies in the accomplishment stories and the competencies in the text box, at least that kind of wafts off the page. They go, oh, yes, this is somebody who we should be talking to. Then they'll go to the next level and really go deeper into what you've done. Is that helpful? All right.
How
Ty,
about, oh, go ahead.
that's-
I'll save it if there's time at the end.
Ty, is that okay if Holly keeps going for just a minute? Okay.
The other question I had was just in building my network, when I find a posting and then I go look to see if I have a connection with that company or that organization, and I don't, it feels like I'm taking hours to do this work with a resume and cover letter and just sending out into the abyss. Like you said, they're getting hundreds. I mean, I'm getting emails back. Thank you for your application due to the overwhelming number of applications.
That's right.
You may
That's
not
right.
hear from us. And so it's very disheartening because I'm in this phase where I'm still building my network, but I feel like I need to be still doing some applying, like balancing the tasks of the job search. And is it just a numbers game to be throwing a couple applications out there?
Here's the thing. It is very rare for people to get jobs through job boards. Let me just let that hang in the air. Okay. It's very rare. People do. It happens. Obviously, somebody's getting hired. Okay. But it's rare, which means that only 10% of your job search should be on the job boards. 90% should be networking. If you apply to a job on a job board, yes, try to find a mutual connection on LinkedIn. Do your very best. If you don't have one, you don't have one. Do your best, right? What's more important is networking in general, networking with people who do what you do, people who are in your sector, people who are in your profession, people who can recommend you, because there is a birds of a feather concept. People do tend to hang out with people who are in similar professions. It's just what we do. HR people hang out with HR people, marketing people hang out with marketing people. They go to marketing associations and HR associations and the American Institute of CPAs, which I don't know if Olga, you're familiar with. And there's a local chapter in the DC area called GWCPA, whatever. Like, there people hang out with their professional colleagues, which means that if your professional colleague hears about an opportunity and it's not right for them, it could be right for you. So for example, Holly, are you in the DC area? I can't remember. Okay. So you're familiar with ATD?
Yeah, they have a local.
They have not just a local chapter, they got a robust local chapter.
Oh,
very, very, it's a thing. So
Yeah.
definitely hang out with those folks, go to their meetings, hang out with them, talk to them, have Zoom coffees with them, whatever. And so as opportunities come their way, they might be able to say, oh, not right for me. Oh, you should call Holly. That's the kind of networking you want to be doing. Association chapters are fantastic places to do that.
Yeah, Holly, that would be number one priority. I mean, they have a meeting just about every month. You need the quicker you can get to one of those meetings and start talking to those people. The other technique that you can use with your network, and as you expand your network, and this is just one possibility, it depends on you and what you're looking for. Some people will say, here are the 5 to 10 companies that I'm really targeting. I'd really like to work for one of these companies or companies in this particular sector or something like that. And that's something you communicate to your network. You let them know that, I'm looking to work for, here are the top 5 nonprofit associations in DC, and I would love to work for one of those, and I'm looking for jobs in those. And somewhere, someplace, trust me, somebody will know somebody in one of those organizations, as long as you're talking to enough people in your network.
All about networking. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Ty.
Just a quick question. You apply for a job, you even interview for a job, and 2 months later you see it out there still being advertised. My question is, for example, in the general job boards, who's responsible for taking it down? Not to pick on Indeed, but like see it out on Indeed 2 months later. Is the employer responsible, or is that
Yes.
something that Indeed
Yes.
decides?
No, Indeed does not decide it. What happens is it's actually not, it's not hanging out in the job board as long as you think, meaning it's not, so you will, how do I put this? Well, it's funny. Indeed is a little bit different than LinkedIn. So when they do a LinkedIn job posting, they do it for a certain period of time. I think for Indeed, it is out there until they take it down. So it is absolutely the employer's responsibility.
And a lot of times.
Actually, I take that back. I'm so sorry. LinkedIn has changed. LinkedIn actually runs like Indeed. In both situations, when you put a job out there, it is out there until the employer decides to take it down. And the other thing too is this, not to get too in the weeds here, but both Indeed and LinkedIn have free postings and they have paid postings. And so if the employer decided to go free, then they might forget about it because it's not costing them anything. But if it's paid, then they'll have like, I'm racking up a bill here. Because it's not that LinkedIn and Indeed no longer do, pay, not no longer, whatever. They don't do the, hey, pay $100, pay $300. It's this per click thing. It's actually, sorry, not per click, per day. So you decide you literally decide how much per day you want to pay. And the more you pay, supposedly the more visibility the ad gets. So $10 a day or $50 a day or whatever, that means you're going to get that many more clicks. I mean, it's complicated. And they have to decide, the employer has to remember to go back there and take it down if they've already filled the job.
Okay, well, that's helpful. And I still subscribe to what you said. If they want me, they will find me.
Yes.
After you interviewed. So it's like going back to them. People tell me, well, you're a salesperson. You need to go back to them and find out where you're at, or tell them you're still interested.
And you can do that. And it's fine to do that. But again, if they're interested, they're going to come find you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up? Okay. All right. Well, we'll end a few minutes early today. So, Olga, I know that you're new to our call. We're going to wrap up the formal part of this session, but then I'm going to, for anyone who wants to stay around, I actually offer a short prayer call. If you want to hang out for that, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing everybody else next week. Okay. Have a blessed day.